blanket permit, also known as a general work permit, is a single permit that covers multiple electrical tasks or projects within a defined area or scope of work. It allows qualified workers to perform specific electrical work without obtaining individual permits for each task. Blanket permits typically cover routine maintenance, repair, and troubleshooting activities. Examples of these activities are firstly, replacing light bulbs, switches, and outlets, secondly, repairing motors and pumps, thirdly, troubleshooting electrical circuits, and fourthly, performing minor modifications to existing electrical systems. A blanket permit may cover electrical installations performed in-house by qualified electricians. This includes new installations, upgrades, and modifications to existing systems. However, it's important to check with your local authority having jurisdiction or OCH for specific requirements. No, a blanket permit is not just for repair. It covers a range of electrical activities, including installation, repair, maintenance, troubleshooting, and modifications. Other considerations include firstly, the scope of work covered by a blanket permit is typically defined in detail and may vary depending on the AHJ. Secondly, electricians must be qualified and licensed to work under a blanket permit. And thirdly, blanket permits may be subject to inspections by the AHJ to ensure compliance with electrical codes and safety regulations. To elaborate further on what a blanket permit covers, let's delve into specific examples and scenarios. Consider a manufacturing facility with numerous pieces of equipment and extensive electrical systems. Under a blanket permit, qualified in-house electricians could perform the following tasks without needing individual permits for each instance. Firstly, replacing faulty sensors on automated machinery. Secondly, repairing damaged conduit runs. Thirdly, upgrading control panels with more efficient components. Fourthly, adding new lighting fixtures in work areas to improve illumination. Fifthly, troubleshooting and repairing variable frequency drives, or VFDs, that control motor speeds. Sixthly, performing preventative maintenance on electrical switchgear to ensure reliable operation. Seventhly, installing new receptacles to accommodate additional equipment. Eighthly, reconfiguring motor control circuits for optimized performance. Ninthly, extending existing circuits to power new equipment in a production line expansion. And tenthly, replacing worn-out fuses and circuit breakers. Now let's consider a commercial building where a blanket permit is in place. Electricians could undertake these projects. Firstly, replacing ballast in fluorescent lighting fixtures. Secondly, repairing malfunctioning emergency lighting systems. Thirdly, installing occupancy sensors to control lighting in common areas. Fourthly, upgrading electrical panels to accommodate increased power demand. Fifthly, troubleshooting and repairing HVAC control systems. Sixthly, adding new circuits for computer workstations. Seventhly, replacing damaged wiring in walls and ceilings. Eighthly, installing surge protection devices at electrical panels. Ninthly, relocating electrical outlets to accommodate office renovations. And tenthly, performing thermographic scans of electrical equipment to identify potential problems. It is very important to note that the exact scope of activities authorized under a blanket permit is dependent on the regulations and requirements of the local authority having jurisdiction. The AHJ sets the rules that the local electricians must follow to stay within the electrical code requirements. It is essential to consult the AHJ for specific guidance on what is allowed. Many factors influence whether a specific task falls within the scope of a blanket permit. Some of these factors include, firstly, the complexity of the task. Simple tasks like replacing light bulbs are generally covered, but more complex installations may require individual permits. Secondly, the voltage level. Work on high voltage systems, such as those above 600 volts, typically requires separate permits and specialized expertise. Thirdly, the location of the work. Work in hazardous locations, such as those with flammable materials, may be subject to stricter permit requirements. Fourthly, the potential risk involved. Tasks with a higher risk of electrical shock or fire may necessitate individual permits. Fifthly, the qualifications of the electrician. Only qualified and licensed electricians are authorized to work under a blanket permit. Sixthly, the specific requirements of the AHJ. Each AHJ has its own rules and regulations regarding electrical permits. When in doubt about whether a specific task falls under the blanket permit, it is advisable to contact the local AHJ for clarification. Attempting to perform electrical work without the proper permits can result in fines, penalties, and even legal action. Furthermore, it can create safety hazards for workers and the public. In addition to covering specific tasks, blanket permits often include general conditions that must be followed. These conditions may include, firstly, compliance with all applicable electrical codes and safety standards, such as the National Electrical Code, or NEC. Secondly, use of approved materials and equipment. Thirdly, proper grounding and bonding of electrical systems. Fourthly, adherence to lockout-tagout procedures to prevent accidental energization. Fifthly, regular inspections of electrical systems to identify and correct any deficiencies. Sixthly, maintenance of accurate records of all electrical work performed. Seventhly, training of electricians on safe work practices and electrical codes. Eighthly, use of personal protective equipment, or PPE, such as gloves, safety glasses, and arc flash suits. Ninthly, proper disposal of electrical waste and hazardous materials. And tenthly, emergency response procedures in case of electrical accidents. To ensure compliance with these conditions, it is important to have a comprehensive electrical safety program in place. This program should include, firstly, written safety procedures, secondly, regular safety meetings, thirdly, job hazard analyses, fourthly, safety training for all employees, fifthly, a system for reporting and investigating electrical incidents, sixthly, regular audits of electrical safety practices, seventhly, a process for correcting any identified deficiencies, eighthly, a commitment to continuous improvement in electrical safety, ninthly, management support for electrical safety initiatives, and tenthly, employee involvement in electrical safety. Blanket permits can also help to streamline the electrical work process and reduce administrative burden. By eliminating the need to obtain individual permits for each task, electricians can spend more time performing actual work and less time dealing with paperwork. This can improve productivity and efficiency while still maintaining safety and compliance. In some cases, blanket permits may be issued for a specific period of time, such as 1 year. At the end of the permit period, it may be necessary to renew the permit or apply for a new one. The renewal process may involve an inspection of the electrical systems covered by the permit to ensure that they are still in compliance with all applicable codes and standards. When applying for a blanket permit, it is important to provide the AHJ with all necessary information, including, firstly, a detailed description of the scope of work covered by the permit, secondly, a list of all qualified electricians who will be working under the permit, thirdly, a copy of the company's electrical safety program, fourthly, a site plan showing the location of all electrical systems covered by the permit, fifthly, a list of all materials and equipment to be used, sixthly, a schedule for the work to be performed, seventhly, a contact person who can be reached in case of emergency, eighthly, proof of insurance, ninthly, any other information required by the AHJ. It is also important to maintain accurate records of all electrical work performed under the blanket permit. These records should include, firstly, the date of the work, secondly, the name of the electrician who performed the work, thirdly, a description of the work performed, fourthly, a list of all materials and equipment used, fifthly, any problems encountered, sixthly, any corrective actions taken, seventhly, the results of any tests performed, eighthly, a sign-off by a qualified supervisor. These records should be kept on file for a minimum of 3 years and should be made available to the AHJ upon request. In conclusion, a blanket permit is a valuable tool for managing electrical work in industrial and commercial environments. It allows qualified electricians to perform a range of tasks without obtaining individual permits for each instance, while still maintaining safety and compliance. By understanding the scope of work covered by a blanket permit and following all applicable codes and standards, electricians can help to ensure the safe and efficient operation of electrical systems. Remember that requirements and restrictions vary, so it is always best to check with the local AHJ.